Mr. Levan Tsutskiridze, leader of the coalition Strong Georgia, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
For many, the choice of the Big Four to refuse to enter the parliament feels familiar, especially recalling the situation in 2020. This breeds skepticism among voters who worry that the opposition or its individual members will inevitably find their way back into parliament. Can you explain why this time will be different, and can you assure your voters that your coalition or its elected members will not legitimize the 11th convocation of parliament?
Well, first of all, I'm very confident in Freedom Square and its members in our commitment not to legitimize the stolen elections by entering the parliament. So in this regard, I'm absolutely confident in our decision not to enter the parliament. Now, regarding the parallels with 2020, I think that we are living in a very different situation. I think there is an overwhelming public support right now to what the opposition in general is doing. And there was no such public support in 2020. I think the situation in the country also, politically speaking, has changed also dramatically, because in 2020, it was not clear for everyone where the country was headed. The European orientation of the country, the very existence of democracy have not been questioned back then as directly. There was no electoral promise by the Georgian dream to abolish democracy, cancel political parties, imprison opponents. And there was no international reaction in 2020, what we see, nothing comparable to what we are seeing today. So it's a very different situation, even though the actions by the opposition may sound and look similar to 2020. It is not. And I think the level and the scale of falsification, vote rigging, intimidation, violations of secrecy of vote have not been that big as they are right now. So we live, and there was no such geopolitical issue at stake in a broader sense, which is right now. So I think it's a very different political context in which the operation is now taking place by the opposition.
Many voters are disappointed, not only with the results, but also because during the pre-election period, both opposition leaders and the president assured the public that the electronic voting system would be secure and that the likelihood of election rigging was minimal. Now, however, we see all of you claiming that the election was stolen. Should we conclude that you were misled from the very start, or is it an attempt to cover up your failure? I mean, we witnessed election manipulations by GD in the past, but do you genuinely believe that it was possible to obtain 1,120,000 votes through manipulation?
No, first of all, of course, nobody in the opposition is naive to the level to believe that the ruling party would create a level playing field and ensure smooth organization of elections where we would not have any interference, any influence, undue influence on voters. And I think all of us were prepared to face the consequences of government not recognizing the election results. The opposition from the very onset was very skeptical of electronic voting machines. So you may recall that I was not in politics back then, but my colleagues were demanding access to the audit of the machines and software, raising many questions regarding all that. For me personally, it's not the machines, it's the people who stand behind the machines. And this is where the key problems arise. I mean, the machine will calculate whatever you feed it to them, right? So my primary question is the level of falsification committed by people. So my big concern is that, not the machines themselves, but how they are being used. And of course, those questions that were raised in the past were legitimate. There was not enough transparency, but also understand why my colleagues from the opposition back then thought that maybe criticizing too much the existing system which they couldn't change because the government was determined to do it, was right, because that would scare many of the opposition voters away from elections. And I think that is rational decision, because they had no influence over the majority of the parliament. They couldn't change their mindset or policy which they set upon. So I understand why they made the decision to reassure voters. And indeed, I would say in the hands of competent, really impartial, really objective, neutral electoral administrations, the machines can be used to the best of their ability. And it depends on intentions, it depends on people, how you use the machines.
So you think that if early elections are called, electronic voting must be used again?
That's another question. We have to deliberate among the coalition about this and within the party. Now we see that the trust was broken. So it will be very, very difficult to somehow restore this trust to the existing system. So if we have new elections, we should definitely have new administration that will handle it, a stronger international oversight, not just observation, but oversight as well. And we really have to reevaluate the public trust towards the machine. And absolutely, absolutely, we need to have a very serious audit and investigation into how this whole system was operating.
Throughout the pre-election period, GD consistently focused on issues that deeply resonate with Georgian voters, such as the importance of peace during wartime and the threats posed by so-called LGBT propaganda. Notably, the Orthodox Church of Georgia has almost explicitly expressed its support for GD. In contrast, your coalition either overlooked these campaign tactics or deemed them ineffective. Don't you think that was a mistake? Isn't it possible that such a campaign could have genuinely influenced people and motivated an additional 200,000 voters to turn out in support of GD?
The short answer is no, because we won the election. The Democratic opposition won the election despite what the official results by the Central Electoral Commission say. So I really believe that was the case. And throughout the entire campaign, we met many people. We've been almost everywhere throughout the country. I have yet to see a person who is on the same page with the Georgian dream, being afraid of suddenly wake up and seeing his or her sex changed, or something like this. Voters I met, maybe there are other voters, but I couldn't meet these people. We've been to the marketplaces, we've been in the mountains, we've been in the cities, in wealthier suburbs, in relatively poor places, etc. Everywhere people care about what tomorrow brings, economically, socially, politically, and they really do deeply care about where Georgia is aligned in terms of its alliances. Are we going back to Russia, or are we going forward to Europe? And those, and with these messages which we used, we connected very well with voters. Overall, I think the opposition employed better strategy than ever before, focusing on positive campaign, not losing time in like intra-opposition infighting, connecting with voters, traveling, speaking, talking to people, shaking hands, making promises, hearing criticism. Unlike GD, we were meeting with people we didn't know, many of them. The GD's campaign was so orchestrated, they knew everybody who were there, at their, these artificial meetings and bussing people in. We were doing the other way around. We were traveling, going to the places where we didn't know what to expect, and people were very positive towards us, and I believe towards the other members of the opposition as well. And that brought results. I really believe that the opposition won this election. If I didn't believe this is my first electoral campaign, I would say so. But I really believe, I felt it. I trust the exit polls, which were always accurate, and I don't trust the Georgian dream.
What raises questions for me is that, as in 2020, the opposition is again relying on results published by outside sources, such as Edison Research. 4 years ago, after a fault was found in ISFET's parallel vote tabulation, the opposition had no choice but to recognize the election results. What if we later found out that mistakes were made by Edison Research itself? Why do you rely on him so much?
Because of the lack of better alternatives, because the trust towards the CC is broken. I know how Edison, for example, was doing exit polls in all the elections they did before. They were very, very close to official results. Very, very close. The closest you could get within the margin of error. So their past performance gives me the confidence to assume that their current performance was also legitimate and credible. In terms of finding errors and mistakes, etc., I think we will find many errors, many mistakes, maybe even many crimes, when we will fully uncover how the Georgian dream manufactured these results.
Later this year, a 300-member electoral college will elect either the incumbent president or a new candidate. According to the results published by the CEC, Georgian Dream already has 179 electors, which is 21 electors short of what it needs to remove the incumbent from office. If the opposition doesn't enter parliament, the fate of President Zurabishvili will fully depend on 54 opposition members of local legislative bodies. What's your plan to prevent Georgian Dream from sidelining the opposition and eliminating its only remaining ally in the executive branch of government?
I think the answer is clear here and simple. First of all, the term already expires very soon of the incumbent president, so there will be the elections there. And then the Georgian Dream doesn't need to elect her successor in the second round of elections. Yes, they may need more votes in the first round, but they can elect the new president with a majority. And for that, they have their votes that they need, and opposition does not have influence on that. So here we are faced with a situation that we can't change much, but by entering the parliament right now, we may be threatening the entire legitimacy of our claims that we really believe that this election was rigged.
Then the question is, will the opposition remain as strong if it is left without the support of the president?
Well, I think the opposition should rely on its supporters right now. I think our biggest strength lies in public support. And we know that there is overwhelming public support to the opposition collectively and to the decision by the Georgian people to remove this government. So this is our major strength. Of course, all the other things are very important in the future. International reaction, support, etc. But the core of our strengths comes from the public support. And I think the opposition should remember, never forget, that it really won the elections and act like that, which is what we're doing right now.